Hello, Deernicorn. This is Andy Licht, live from Big Bad Con, and I am sitting here with Steve Jackson of Steve Jackson Games. Steve, for those who don't know you, which would be surprising, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Steve. I'm smiling under the mask for what it's worth. I have been a game nut since college. My first RPG was first edition D&D, and it was a terrible game. The game master had no idea what he was doing. Later, things got better. I worked for metagaming for a while in the 70s, the late 70s. I did game development at first, and my first original title was Ogre. I broke off and started my own company in 1980 and have managed to still be around.
So, Steve, you are well known for GURPS, of course, along with many other games. But before GURPS, back when you were working for metagaming, you had a number of other titles that you worked on and published. Do any of those still stick with you? Which of those do you carry with you today and feel inspired by?
Well, the first game that I ever worked on developing was Monsters, which was a Ken St. Andre title. It was a spin-off of Tunnels and Trolls, which TNT was the second role-playing game, or the first, we're going to do it different, imitator of D&D, depending on how you want to read your history. Monsters, the gimmick is you are playing a monster. You come up from underground and go charging into the city, wreaking havoc. But it is an RPG. It's just you're a monster character. And what stuck with me from that one was just the love of turning things around backwards. That was fun.
I love that. First off, it sounds like a blast. I mean, who wouldn't want to be the monster?
Right.
And so you've continued to do that throughout your career then, it seems like. Take these common tropes and flip them around.
I mean, there's always another trope in there if you look at it sideways.
Totally. Okay. Have you played Monsters recently? When was the last time you played it?
It's been at least 5 years since I played it. I've certainly seen games and scenarios that were inspired by it, though maybe second or third hand, because the meme is out there now.
Right.
And we can be the bad guys.
Sure. Yes, I have seen those games. Its ripples are far and wide. So after Monsters and working with metagaming, eventually you made GURPS. How did GURPS come to be, and what need was it fulfilling in the RPG ecosystem?
Well, how it came to be is that in the separation from metagaming, I had sold the rights to my first RPG system, the Fantasy Trip, which I liked very much, and I still wanted to be writing role-playing games. The thing that I settled on for GURPS, the need that I wanted to meet, this was coming out in a period when role-playing was diversifying into lots of different genres, but different systems, sometimes very complicated systems, were being written for each genre.
Right.
And a lot of these systems didn't really have anything much to contribute. They were supporting sometimes very, very good lore, but the system was not worth the trouble of learning, in my humble, grumpy opinion.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I said, why not try to come up with a system that can encompass any background and any combination of backgrounds, and then people can learn the system and get it out of the way and just role play.
Absolutely. And is it true then that GURPS is probably the first setting agnostic game or system ever? Maybe at the time. I think it was probably the first, yeah?
I don't know if it qualifies as setting agnostic completely, because we did release it with a fantasy skin at first.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the goal was always to have it encounter all settings, but you start with fantasy because that's what people wanted the most then and still want the most now.
Indeed,
And
fantasy is kind of a comfortable point for a lot of people.
yes, it's funny. Fantasy is now familiar. If we're talking generic heroic fantasy where the elves have pointed ears.
Fantasy is familiar is interesting indeed. So fantasy is where we started, but of course there are many other settings or modules that people can use with GURPS. Is there any one that stuck out to you in particular over the years as being either a setting that works really well with GURPS or just that you've had a great time with?
A personal favorite is GURPS Goblins,
Okay.
which is a licensed adaptation of an RPG that was just called Goblins. And I liked their background and their lore so much that I went to them and said, please, 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 can I do this in GURPS? This is set in something very like Georgian England, with a kind of alternate human race with a mutable biology, and it's very, very arch, very tongue-in-cheek, very mannered, except when it gets gritty or positively vulgar.
Okay. Okay. And we play as these goblins, these
Yes.
creatures. Oh, right.
Yes, and they have their own society, but their biology is different and interesting. They're not gendered until they reach adolescence, and then they decide.
Huh.
And
Well, what a nice life. I wish I would have done that way. It's a good deal. Yeah.
but they are very physically diverse. Many of them are grotesques, even to their own people. But their own people don't worry so much about grotesquerie. They worry about status.
Okay.
If it's as status conscious a background as anything ever in World of Darkness, but it's silly.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I would love to play just GURPS Goblins sometime.
Yes.
Simple as. All right, and see what kind of chaos ensues.
Yes.
So
Have a dinner party.
yeah,
That's a sure way to break the ice and also get pudding all over the ceiling.
you're right. It sounds like I have a messy, perhaps vulgar, grotesque dinner party.
Yes.
Totally. So after working on GURPS, there was, it seems like a number of years where you were doing role-playing games, and then eventually you switched over to card games with the ever-popular Munchkin and a few other notable titles. How did you get from role-playing games to card games and dice games?
I have always been a dilettante. I have never been able to stick to one kind of game as long as other types of games keep coming up. I actually started with board games, specifically with hexagon and area movement war games.
Okay.
And went from there to role-playing games, and there was a little byway into live-action role-playing with Killer. Do not play Killer anymore. This is 2024, and you can't play Killer. Just don't.
PSA, do not.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Munchkin card game was a complete whim. I wanted to write a game to, as the Brits say, take the piss out of bad style D&D, out of the kind of role playing that is just rule playing and level grabbing. And I thought, this is funny enough. I could probably write some funny cards about it. One thing led to another. The playtesters, when I brought it out the first time, wouldn't put it down. We got Kovalik attached to it, and he has remained firmly attached ever since then. And his art is a great part of the game.
The art style is phenomenal and really sets the tone. I mean, if you've been into a game store, you've seen the Munchkin art.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
And that was an unexpected success. My partner Monica was there from the very beginning on the development and playtesting. And when we sent it to press for 1,000 copies, why did I say 1,000? 5,000 copies. Monica said, that's not enough. And when we sold out in a month or so, we printed another 10,000, and Monica said, that's not enough. And when we sold out of those in another month or so, we got up to 25 and 50,000 press runs, and she's like, that's more like it.
My mouth is agape right now. For viewers at home who can't see, I'm shocked and stunned. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's incredible. And of course now 10,000 probably makes that's probably a small number by comparison to how many Munchkins are out there in the world today. So.
I know there are more than 1 million copies of the core game out there, and I think the last time we tried to figure it out, it was something like 4 million copies when you count all of the sequels, all of the supplements, all of the foreign editions, and so on and so on. But we haven't assessed that in a while. It's a big number.
It's beyond math at this point. So we've covered your spanning career thus far, just touching on a few points as we go. Here now in the modern day, I'm curious about what makes you excited as a designer. Where are you pulling inspiration from? And yeah, what makes you excited about games?
Well, I like sitting down at the table and playing. And it doesn't have to be I like seeing new games, but I like playing the old ones too.
Yeah.
I'm excited by developments in role-playing on ways to make the lore and the mechanics intersect better. Everything, it's okay to get out of the box on your designs, but then build a new box and get everything into it. Make it all work together. Just to call out one designer, J Dragon is doing things that are mind-bogglingly neat.
Yes,
and
we love J Dragon here. We have as many of Jay's games as we can, at least, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, the first time I met Jay, I was looking at some of the little zine games at Jay's booth.
Sure.
And I got kind of engrossed in one. And then I looked at Jay and said, "You made me cry."
You're kidding.
Oh.
That's incredible. And the power of games.
Yeah.
All right.
And the power of very good evocative writing.
Yes, Jay is an incredibly evocative writer and poet, totally. So, if you were to give advice to either a younger Steve or to just anyone who's starting as a game designer today, what would you tell them? What's the most important thing that you've learned?
The advice
to the
the advice to the younger Steve would all be personal. I'm okay with the way the career has gone, except that I really should have bought into Wizards of the Coast when I had the chance.
Okay.
And that's not career. That's bankroll.
If you have a time machine, invest in Wizards of the Coast stock now. Yeah.
Yeah. A designer. Play everything you can, meet as many people as you can, and when you have a design you like, play test hell out of it. Don't just play it with your friends. I mean, try not to have any enemies, but
okay.
but find some strangers to play the game with too.
Right.
Because no one group is going to put a game through its paces. I mean, it needs to be clear and perfect. I mean, despite the joke in Munchkin about you should always argue at the drop of a hat, you shouldn't. The game is creating a world, and every time you can't figure out the rules, it takes you back into this world where you're looking at a stupid sheet of paper.
Right. Okay, so play test the game.
Yes.
Play test it with all kinds of different people, friends, strangers, maybe even enemies if you have those. Understood.
If you can get them to the table, yeah, who knows? They might not be enemies when you stand up.
It's true. And that's the power of games. Yeah, truly. Yeah. So, Steve, what do you want people to look forward to? Is there, where can people find you if you want to be found? And then what should people look out for from Steve Jackson Games? What is on the horizon, or what should we go pick up?
Okay, The best way to find me is either at conventions or just online. It's sjgames.com. If you need to write to me, I'm sj@sjgames.com. Various big things coming up. The most exciting one is that we secured the United States rights to reprint the Fighting Fantasy series, which is the paragraph choosing fantasy game books that were launched by Ian Livingstone and the British Steve Jackson. Long story there.
Yeah, yes, so I've heard. Yeah.
At something like 30 years ago, but we're going to be republishing the whole series at 10 a year. I'm excited about those. They introduced a lot of people to games, to simple role playing, to dice don't hurt you, pick them up and play with them. And I think they'll be a big hit still again.
Incredible. And it sounds like they're getting maybe a pass on art or graphic design, or it's going to be a new revised version of these games.
Actually, more like true to the roots than revised.
Oh.
The only revisions that we're planning to make are places where somebody has actually found a glitch in the paragraph pathing.
Okay.
We're certainly going to spiff up the interior design. We have a new cover design, but wherever possible, we're going to use the classic covers.
Okay.
There have been a number of editions of these games in the UK and Europe over the years, and sometimes the publisher, for no apparent reason, would go get another cover, often an inferior one. But we're working directly with Sir Ian on this, and I mean, as far as choices of art and so on, consider him the art director.
Okay.
This is going to be designer's intent, big time.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like the games weren't broken the first time. Nothing there to fix.
They weren't broken. No, we just have to get them in front of people.
Love it. And these were the correct me if I'm wrong. Fantasy Fight.
Fighting Fantasy.
Fighting Fantasy. Okay.
Yes.
Fighting Fantasy games. Look out for those from Steve Jackson Games. And Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I'll let you get back to
Good
the con.
talk.
But thanks for chatting.